Ladies, where exactly are we going? Exactly.
Where the rainbow is.
Tom Cruise is a sexual magnet for everyone he meets in Eyes Wide Shut, the 13th and final film by the late Stanley Kubrick. And we're devoting the entire program this week to a discussion of Eyes Wide Shut. I'm Armchair Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times, and joining me here today are four of my Chicago colleagues.
Hi, I'm Mike Wilmington, movie critic of the Chicago Tribune.
I'm Ray Pride, film critic of New City.
I'm Dan Geyer, film critic of the Chicago Daily Herald.
And I'm Jonathan Rosenbaum, film critic for the Chicago Reader.
When the news of the unexpected death of Stanley Kubrick arrived, there was a sense of shock in the film world, where Kubrick was generally considered a grand master. Here he is directing The Shining, which he began filming in 1978.
But don't look at your hands, Danny. Don't look at your hands when you come around. Keep it low. Come on. Slowly, slowly, slowly. Keep coming.
When he died last March, he had just finished work on Eyes Wide Shut, which would be his last film, and he left a legacy of other movies that have survived the test of time to become familiar classics. After some early work, his career really took off with The Killing in 1957, the story of a racetrack robbery.
All right, get your hands up, all of you. Now, one move out of any one of you, and I'm going to start firing.
Then came Paths of Glory with Kirk Douglas as a World War I French officer who loses his faith in the cause.
I apologize, sir, for not telling you sooner that you're a degenerate, sadistic old man. And you can go to hell before I apologize to you now or ever again.
Spartacus, an epic that Kubrick said he didn't like, but audiences did. The controversial Lolita with James Mason in love with a nymphette.
I don't want you around them. They're nasty-minded boys.
The classic black comedy Dr. Strangelove with Peter Sellers in 3 roles and George C. Scott as a gum-chewing general.
The bomb, Dimitri. The hydrogen bomb.
The visionary 2001 A Space Odyssey, generally considered one of the best films of the century. A Clockwork Orange, about a future society where mind control does battle with violence. Barry Lyndon, based on Thackeray's novel about a petty little man who lives against the backdrop of tumultuous times in Europe. The Shining, with Jack Nicholson slowly going mad during a long snowbound winter.
Damn soul. Just a glass of beer.
Hi, Lloyd.
What would be?
And Full Metal Jacket, which begins with basic training and then takes his characters to Vietnam. And what's amazing about all those films is that they don't get old. I mean, his films really seem to exist in our memories, and the images remain sharp even after all these years. He's a master of style, a perfectionist, a man who never made a movie casually or just for box office gain. Jonathan, what's the first attribute you think of when you think of Stanley Kubrick?
I think of intelligence. It's funny, I often think of each of his films as being like about the inside of a brain, about a system that sort of starts working and then starts breaking down. Mm-hmm. And you know, people often say he was cold, but for me, it's just that what's difficult is that the emotions are twisted, so you have to like follow them through a maze. But they're never cold. They're just elusive.
Michael.
Well, I think of 2 words that keep popping up in his titles: fear and desire, killer's kiss, strange love, that kind of tension that you see in all his films between love and death, sex and murder, between the two, the creative side of life and the destructive side of life. He was a filmmaker who was a great perfectionist, who was a master of images and a master of a certain kind of exaggerated performance style. But he also dealt with very large issues. He grappled with the eternal. He was not a simplistic or a simple director. And that's one of the best things about him.
Dan.
Stanley Kubrick has been called the Howard Hughes of cinema because he was such a recluse. I prefer to think of him as the Frank Sinatra of cinema because he always did everything his way. I mean, let's face it, here's a guy who would be tirelessly putting together the thing the way he wanted to. Nobody interfered with him. You can go back to any Kubrick film and feel rebirth, regenerated, because here you're in the presence of somebody who genuinely stood for what the heart and the soul of the cinematic art really was.
Ray?
In relating to Kubrick's heart and mind, I think of the quote from his collaborator Michael Herr, who co-wrote Full Metal Jacket, who said that merciless is not the same as pitiless. But I would also think about his painstaking preparations he would make to prevent a movie from divulging all its secrets on a single viewing. These are films that need to be seen a few times before you start really getting at the nice, smart things underneath.
He made very complex films. You know, when you called him the Frank Sinatra of cinema because he did things his way, in a way, he kind of represented something to all of us because he was over there on his estate in England. He was far from Hollywood. He owned his own cameras, his own editing equipment, his own sound, and he worked entirely according to his own schedule. It's kind of inspiring at a time when everybody else seems to be marching to the drums of commerce and promotion.
Or when young screenwriters are being taught that 12 weeks is too long to spend on crafting a screenplay.
He'd spend 12 weeks on a single scene if he needed to. Yeah. Michael?
Well, he believed in movie making as an art, and he was not ashamed to call himself an artist, and he was a proud perfectionist, someone who really wanted to get it right. His legend was of the guy who would shoot not just 20 or 30 takes, but 50 takes, 60 takes, 100 takes, who would keep on going and put his actors through grueling paces until they got it right, until they got it perfectly, until they got the art and the power and the passion that he wanted.
Yeah, but at the same time, he was really a kind of like experimental, personal filmmaker, which I think, and in fact, he represents one of the rare cases in film history where there's a meeting point between this kind of tradition of the small, personal, experimental film and the big studio film as well. He somehow managed to put them together.
And something else Michael said, which was interesting in looking at the contrast between Killer and Kiss, or Fear and Desire, or for that matter, Clockwork and Orange, the organic and the machine. The titles themselves show a contrast between the controlling idea and the organic idea.
The key to his success as a filmmaker in a collaborative sense, not just the auteur sense, is that he was the ruthless general everyone wanted to march with. He got everyone on his side, and no matter what happened, he expected his cast and crew to keep up with his standards.
Yet he was able to inspire a lot of loyalty, so that somebody like Cruise was able to take 3 years out of his career to make this film and still speak fondly about him.
He was a general that people were willing to take army pay from, basically.
But you know, I think the press has given him a bad rep when they keep, I mean, everybody talks about him being asocial and a recluse. He didn't like to talk to the press, but he had friends, he was a family man, he communicated with people all the time.
Okay, well now let's turn to Kubrick's final film, Eyes Wide Shut, which stars Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman as a wealthy Manhattan doctor and his wife. They lead a comfortable life that seems happy enough, but unfilled needs are boiling away beneath the surface, and one night, stoned on pot, they get into an argument.
You've never been jealous about me, have you?
No, I haven't.
And why haven't you ever been jealous about me?
Well, I don't know, Alice. Maybe because you're my wife. Maybe because you're the mother of my child. And I know you would never be unfaithful to me.
Their argument escalates. She inflames him with her sexual fantasies, and he leaves the house and enters on an odyssey that takes him into a sexual underworld, to a secret private orgy that an old friend tells him about.
Remove your clothes.
Please.
Remove your clothes. Or would you like us to do it for you?
After he returns at dawn from the orgy, he finds his wife in the middle of a nightmare, and she describes it to him.
But that's not the end. Is it? No. Why don't you tell me the rest of it?
One of the film's best qualities is the way it gives screen time and weight to the supporting performances. Watch the way here that Sidney Pollack dominates this scene as a rich man who asked the doctor to look after a date who has overdosed.
I can't thank you enough for this.
Oh, I'm glad I was here.
And Bill, I probably... Oh, I know I don't have to mention this, but this is just between us, okay?
Eyes Wide Shut plays almost like a dream odyssey through a series of erotically charged scenes. All five of us will be back to discuss what we think about it after this.
When I read the script, I must have read it in about an hour, and I am not someone that... I'm not a fast reader. And I just was... I remember putting it down thinking, oh my God.
I first saw him that morning in the lobby. He was checking into the hotel, and he was following the bellboy with his luggage.
Welcome back to the special program devoted to a discussion of Eyes Wide Shut, Stanley Kubrick's final film. And I am joined here today by four of my fellow Chicago film critics: Michael Wilmington of the Chicago Tribune, Jonathan Rosenbaum of the Chicago Reader, Ray Pride of New City, and Dan Geyer of the Chicago Daily Herald. And gentlemen, as I was watching Eyes Wide Shut, I realized how completely my attention was focused on this film. It's a long film, 159 minutes, but Kubrick makes it spellbinding right up until the end, which, however, resolves things a little bit too conventionally for my taste. Instead of sending the Cruise character on a sexual odyssey, which is kind of what we expected from the advanced rumors, it sends him on a voyeuristic journey. He visits, he sees, he talks, he witnesses, but somehow he never quite gets involved. Everything in the film, the saturated sideshow colors, the edgy music, the costumes, the ritual, it all adds up to a nightmare vision of a man whose jealousy takes him right up to the edge. I think this is a very good film. Michael, what do you think?
Well, I'd be a little more extreme, I guess. I think it's one of Kubrick's best works. And one of the reasons I think that is because I looked at most of them to do a long piece on them. I'd rank it among his 4 or 5, and 4 or 5 best.
Dan, what did you think about Eyes Wide Shut?
It does something very, very important, I think, to say about intimacy and honesty in marriage or any relationship. I mean, you have Nicole Kidman, who's very open with her fantasies of what she thinks about sex and her needs. Tom Cruise is her husband. He's not only not being honest with her, he's in self-denial about his own fantasies and needs. And so this creates the disequilibrium that sets the story in motion. So the rest of the movie is a very giant, convoluted plot to get Cruise to the point where he can be back to equilibrium with his wife. I mean, that's the whole journey, this whole odyssey of the film. I have never seen anything quite like this. Still, on the same token, it's a Kubrick film, and it has all the Kubrick trappings. So it's kind of a maddening mix, wonderful images, but detached drama. You know, if you can get by that, I think it's a fine film.
Jonathan?
Well, I was had the advantage and the disadvantage of having read Arthur Schnitzler's novella, Traum Nouvelle, before I saw the film, and was amazed at how close an adaptation it is. I'm really eager to see this film again because I had some trouble getting used to Tom Cruise in relation to this. He seems to be kind of a caricature. He seemed to be a thinner character than the others, whereas I thought Nicole Kidman and Sidney Pollack were both quite extraordinary.
Ray Pride?
I think that Cruise's journey through nighttime New York is kind of an illustration of the very common question, what are you thinking? And he probably shouldn't have asked, because the things he's going to discover in these adventures are things he probably never imagined he would see. And in a way, because of its dreamy form, like he's always interrupted when he thinks he's about to discover something. It's like a dream, it's like coitus interruptus, interruptus. Because of that dreamy form, it becomes kind of a masterpiece of sexual intimacy in the sense that people get so close to each other, but when you reach a certain distance, you don't get inside them, you get beyond them. And it's infuriating in one's own dreams, but here it's pretty hypnotic.
Well, the thing is, though, I thought Cruise was fine in the film, and I think he helps it to a degree because I think he is a figure whom the audience does kind of fixate on. He's one of those movie stars.
In a way, he's more powerful than Kubrick. I mean, you know, people are going to be going to see this film probably more often because of Tom Cruise and because of...
But that's not necessarily bad because Cruise did lend his power to it, and I think it's used in his movie star persona is used in a kind of interesting way. I was very surprised that I thought Cruise was a little bit more successful not a little bit, that he was more successful as a Kubrick protagonist than Jack Nicholson in The Shining, who's one of my very all-time favorite actors, but who I don't think leads you into the maze quite as effectively.
Well, one of the things that works, because it's Tom Cruise, is that everyone in the film relates to him sexually. Even the drunks on the street who try a little gay bashing. Every single character in this movie looks at him in a particular way. Okay, when we come back, Stanley Kubrick wanted to do 2 things. He wanted to make an adult film, and he wanted it to qualify for the R rating.
Maybe a bad thing.
that's how we worked, and it was just intimate. You know, a lot of times you just felt like it was just me, Nick, and Stanley in those scenes.
You ever pray with all your heart and soul just to walk away? Maybe the bad thing.
Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman with a little help from a Chris Isaak song in that scene from Eyes Wide Shut. And here joining me are four of my film critic colleagues from here in Chicago to discuss Kubrick's final film. And you know, when we heard about this film in preparation, we kept hearing it was going to be an adult film. It was going to be a really steamy film. And I think a lot of people expected it to get the NC-17 rating. But I was talking the other day to Terry Simmel, the chairman of Warner Brothers, who simply said, we're not in the business of NC-17. And that both he and Kubrick, he said, wanted an R rating for this film. And Jan Harlan, the executive producer of the film, and Tom Cruise both told me that Kubrick himself approved of the idea of using these digital figures who stand between us and the action, kind of the Austin Powers shot, where you can't quite see what's going on behind them. And as a result, we have these 65 seconds in the middle of the film that are not quite as Kubrick would have preferred in a different world.
Well, what's infuriating, in a way, is that, you know, if there had been an axe murder in that scene, it would have gotten an R rating with the blessings of the MPAA. Yeah. And that's what, I mean, it just seems like such a strange sense of priorities.
The galling thing about it is, Roger, that if you took the film that Kubrick originally envisioned without the digital stuff, you could put it on late-night HBO as is right now, and we can't get that version released in theaters around the country.
But the real tragedy is these digital smudges are preventing us from having the same revelation as the character. He's been fantasizing about things that his wife may have done or that she might do with another man, and suddenly he's confronted with the fleshy reality of all these things.
So movies like Happiness, for example, were released without a rating at all. And this movie could have been released unrated, except Warner Brothers wasn't willing to do that. And so we get really a fairly minor change in the movie. And we still get the idea, but it just seems like it's galling.
It's 65 seconds, not a big deal, but here's something else. It aesthetically doesn't work for me because you're in Cruise's eyes.
Here is a guy who is looking at stuff, and you can't see what he's looking at, and it seems wrong.
There's something not right about it.
You get it intellectually, but it has no cinematic or emotional force, which is what he's built through all the way up to the film for an hour and 20 minutes.
Audiences, it's an aesthetic flaw.
It's a flaw, and it does not correspond with Cruise's natural curiosity to go around the implanted figures to see what's going on.
Nor does it make the film more moral, or I think more acceptable. It's you can see what's kind of happening, and you know it's there.
It's dirtier. It's dirtier to have it half glimpsed
because
than to go ahead
what you
and
imagine is always worse than what you actually
see. From a dream into an annoying nightmare.
Okay, when we come back, we'll all make. When we come back, we'll all make our personal choices from among Kubrick's greatest films. Films are almost all available on film and disc, and I want to go around the table and ask you guys which one you would recommend and what people should look for. Ray?
I would say the Steadicam rushing through the corridors, the haunted hotel, and The Shining.
Dan?
Roger, I was a teenager traumatized by the X-rated Clockwork Orange.
Jonathan Rosenbaum.
Well, I think I'd recommend The Killing, specifically for all these wonderful noir actors.
That car arrives about 5 o'clock and parks directly in front of the main entrance to the clubhouse. 2 men stay in it. One at the wheel, the other at a machine gun in the turret.
Michael Wilmington.
A must-see for movie lovers is the great visionary science fiction epic 2001: A Space Odyssey, and that wonderful way that he lyricizes technology in the Blue Danube docking scene.
And as for myself, I just looked at Dr. Strangelove again last week. It's a comedy that holds up and still has its satiric edge after all these years. And the thing I liked best about it this time was George C. Scott's facial expressions in the war room.
Now, it appears that the order called for the planes to attack their targets inside Russia.
When we come back, a look at Stanley Kubrick's favorite visual trademark. We're going to end with a montage of Stanley Kubrick's favorite visual close-up. Thanks very much, guys, for joining me today. I think it was a good discussion. We give it 5 Positive votes, 5 people like the movie. All of us want to see it again before we write our review. Remember, you can hear this show and reviews of all the new movies on our website, Siskel-Ebert.com, part of the Go Network. And next week, I'll be back with reviews of more new summer movies, including The Haunting with Liam Neeson. That's next week, and until then, the balcony, if we had one, would be closed.